The celestial deadline. The bioluminescent patterns across Ambassador Lethera's translucent skin pulsed with anxiety as she stood before the Galactic Confederation Council. Her gill filaments quivered beneath her ceremonial moisture cloak, the only indication of her rising desperation. Honorable representatives, Lethera's voice translator conveyed, the Nilari plead once more for your assistance. Our binary star system will collapse within 67 standard cycles. Our calculations are precise. We have exhausted all technological solutions. Without evacuation, our entire species, all 8 billion Nilari, face extinction. The council chamber, a vast hexagonal hall carved from a single asteroid, remained uncomfortably silent. 12 species represented the voting bloc, their environmental pods arranged in tiered semicircles. The head counselor, a methane-breathing Viridian with glossy obsidian skin, leaned forward. Ambassador, the Confederation acknowledges your situation's gravity, the Viridian stated, his voice conveying artificial sympathy through the translation matrix. However, our resource allocation algorithms have reached the same conclusion in 7 consecutive analyses. The holographic display at the chamber's center projected complex equations and logistics scenarios, all ending in the same conclusion. Evacuation request insufficient on investment. The Nilari contribution to Confederation technological, cultural, and economic development does not justify the expenditure required for species-wide relocation, continued the counselor. We can offer documentation assistance to preserve your cultural legacy, but resources for physical evacuation exceed justifiable allocation parameters. Lethera's luminous patterns darkened in distress. You speak of parameters and algorithms while my people face extinction. We have contributed our aquatic farming techniques, our bioengineering advances. All duly noted and appreciated, interrupted a Soriak's representative, her feathered crest rippling with impatience. But these contributions, while valuable, do not offset the estimated 18 trillion credit expenditure an evacuation would require. Lethera's translator emitted a sound between a sob and a gasp. You condemn us to die because we are not profitable enough to save. The Confederation regrets your circumstances, the head counselor concluded, but our decision is final. This session is adjourned. As council members retreated to their transport pods, Lethera stood alone, her moisture cloak barely concealing her trembling form. Captain Alina Reyes squinted at the long-range scanner readings aboard the Earth exploration vessel Horizon. The binary star system ahead didn't appear on any of their Confederation-issued star charts. Interesting, she murmured, brushing back her salt and pepper hair. Navarro, what are we looking at? Lieutenant Navarro adjusted his glasses, a personal affectation in an age of ocular implants. Binary system, Captain. Unstable. Spectral analysis indicates accelerated fusion in the primary star, with gravitational anomalies affecting its companion. Pretty, but dangerous, and definitely not on our assigned survey route. Added Commander Jackson, the ship's XO. His dark eyes narrowed. Confederation protocols state we should log the anomaly and continue on our designated path. Elena smiled slightly. Since when have humans been particularly good at following protocols when there's something interesting to explore? Captain, interrupted Communications Officer Lai, her fingers dancing over the holographic interface. I'm detecting artificial signals from the 4th planet. Definitely not natural. An unregistered civilization. Elena's eyebrows shot up. More than that, Lai replied, expression puzzled. The signal patterns match Confederation standardized distress formats, but they're not coming through official channels. Elena leaned forward in her command chair. Seems someone needs help, and the Confederation isn't listening. Plot a course, Navarro. Let's introduce ourselves. Jackson cleared his throat. Captain, as your XO, I should remind you that Earth's position in the Confederation is still probationary. Unauthorized first contact is technically against regulations. Elena nodded, But distress signals supersede standard protocols according to Section 12, Paragraph 7 of those same regulations. We're just being good Confederation citizens, Jackson. Her XO's lips twitched into a reluctant smile. As always, your knowledge of loopholes is impressive, Captain. The Horizon entered orbit around the Equa-Green world 3 days later. Sensor scans revealed vast oceanic expanses dotted with floating metropolises, massive organic-looking structures that merge technology with cultivated marine life forms. Beautiful, breathed Elena as the view screen displayed high-resolution images of the floating cities. And utterly doomed if those binary stars are as unstable as our readings suggest. Lai's console chimed. Captain, we're being hailed. The view screen shifted to reveal a slender, humanoid figure with translucent blue-green skin that rippled with internal bioluminescence. The being wore what appeared to be a water-filled environmental suit. Unknown vessel, the being spoke through an obviously hastily calibrated translator. I am Coordinator Keyleth of the Nilari Evacuation Committee. You are not Confederation design. Identify yourselves. Elena stepped forward. I'm Captain Elena Reyes of the Earth exploration vessel Horizon. We detected your distress signal and came to investigate. The alien's internal lights flickered in what Elena guessed was surprise. Earth, the newly admitted species. You responded to our distress call when no other Confederation members would. We tend to investigate when someone calls for help, Elena replied simply. What's your situation? Over the next hour, Coordinator Keyleth explained the Nilari's plight, their failing star system, the Confederation's refusal to assist, and the increasingly desperate measures the aquatic species had taken to try to save themselves. Our projections give us less than 65 cycles, approximately 54 of your Earth days, before catastrophic stellar collapse. Keyleth's translator conveyed his despair clearly. We have begun selecting genetic samples for preservation, but we cannot save our people. Elena felt her jaw tighten. The Confederation refused evacuation assistance based on cost-benefit analysis. Our species was deemed. Keyleth's translator paused, searching for the term. Not valuable enough to justify the expense. A heavy silence fell over the Horizon's bridge. Elena glanced around at her crew, humans who had only recently gained a foothold in galactic society. Earth had joined the Confederation just 11 years earlier, still viewed by most established species as primitive newcomers lucky to have achieved faster-than-light travel. Captain, Jackson began cautiously, reading her expression. Whatever you're thinking. Coordinator Keyleth, Elena interrupted, her decision already made. Request permission to send a landing party. I believe it's time Earth demonstrated a different approach to interstellar relations. The diplomatic team materialized on the main platform of the Nilari Central Coordination Facility, a massive floating structure that served as the species' governmental headquarters. Wearing specially designed environmental suits to accommodate the high-humidity atmosphere, Elena and her team followed Keyleth through corridors that resembled living coral more than constructed hallways. Our entire civilization evolved in symbiosis with our oceans, explained Lethera, who had returned from the Confederation Council to find unexpected visitors. We build with guided growth rather than construction. Now all of it will be destroyed when our stars collapse. Elena studied the biological architecture with fascination. How many Nilari? 8,200,000,000, replied Lethera. Our evacuation simulations estimate we would need at least 600 large-capacity vessels to transport even a fraction of our population. The Confederation calculated the cost at 18 trillion credits. Elena nodded thoughtfully. And I'm guessing the Confederation values the Nilari contribution to galactic society at somewhat less than that figure. Precisely. Lethera's bioluminescent patterns dimmed. They offered cultural preservation, records of our existence after we are gone. A monument instead of a rescue, muttered Dr. Patel, the Horizon's xenobiologist. Efficient. Cold, but efficient. Elena walked to the edge of the platform where a transparent barrier revealed the vast ocean beyond. Schools of creatures that resembled both fish and birds soared through the waters. Humanity faced extinction-level threats before we achieved space travel, she said quietly. Climate change, nuclear arsenals, resource depletion. We came close to ending ourselves several times. Yet you survived, observed Keyleth. Not through efficiency. Elena turned, her eyes reflecting determination. Through stubbornness, ingenuity, and refusing to accept unacceptable outcomes. The Confederation has made its calculation. Now let's make ours. For the next several hours, Elena and her team immersed themselves in Nilari data, population distribution, available transportation, technical capabilities, and the increasingly unstable stellar readings. The situation was dire, but Elena's expression grew more determined with each passing hour. Finally, she contacted the horizon. Jackson, I need you to dispatch an emergency communication to Earth using our quantum entanglement array. Confederation channels won't work for this. Captain, Jackson's voice held warning. What you're suggesting is absolutely against Confederation regulations, Elena finished for him. And absolutely the right thing to do. Send the message. As night fell on the Nilari capital, Elena stood with Lethera and Keyleth beneath the ominous glow of their dying stars. My people have resigned themselves to extinction, Lethera said softly. What can a single Earth vessel possibly do against such a fate? Elena smiled. One vessel? Nothing. But humanity doesn't work that way. She looked up at the turbulent stars. We're about to show the Confederation what humans do when someone tells us something is impossible. The unconventional solution. 23 days later, Lethera stood on the same observation platform, her luminous patterns pulsing with disbelief at the sight before her. The space above the Nilari homeworld seemed to ripple as hundreds of vessels, a staggering variety of sizes and designs, emerged from faster-than-light travel. What is this? She whispered. Captain Elena Reyes, now haggard from weeks of minimal sleep, smiled broadly. That, Ambassador, is the Earth Civilian Response Fleet. The fleet was unlike anything the Confederation had ever assembled. Where Confederation vessels bore the sleek uniformity of centralized production, this armada displayed the chaotic diversity of individual creation. Retrofitted cargo haulers flew alongside luxury passenger cruisers. Converted asteroid mining vessels dwarfed nimble research ships. Some were clearly cobbled together from disparate parts, engineering solutions that prioritized function over form. But how? Keyleth's translator struggled to convey his astonishment. The Confederation said 600 specialized evacuation ships would be required. The Confederation calculated based on their standardized approaches. Elena explained. Humans have always been good at improvisation. Every vessel you see volunteered when Earth received our message. Commander Jackson joined them, his uniform rumpled from constant work. 2,347 ships, to be exact. Some barely made it through faster than light, but they came anyway. An alert chimed on Jackson's communicator. And right on schedule, here comes the Confederation's response. As if summoned by his words, 5 massive Confederation enforcement vessels appeared at the system's edge, their distinctive silver-blue hulls gleaming menacingly. Captain Reyes, a stern voice echoed through the command frequency. This is Enforcement Commander Vex Lauren. Your unauthorized fleet deployment violates 17 Confederation regulations. Stand down immediately and prepare for boarding. Elena exchanged glances with Jackson before responding. Commander Vex Lauren, we are conducting an emergency evacuation of endangered sentients as permitted under the Sentient Rights Preservation Act, Section 4. The Nilari evacuation request was formally denied by council vote, came the immediate reply. Your actions directly contradict Confederation authority. This will mean expulsion for Earth from the Confederation. Final warning. Stand down. Lethera's luminous patterns darkened with distress. Captain, we cannot ask you to sacrifice your species' standing. Elena held up her hand. Humanity's first contact with alien life wasn't the Confederation. It was a damaged Milorian scout ship that crashed in the Pacific Ocean. Instead of exploiting their technology or treating them as threats, local fishermen risked their lives to save the crew. She smiled at the memory. When the Confederation found us decades later, they were baffled by our irrational decision. We've never quite fit their cost-benefit models. The enforcement vessels are moving into blockade formation, Jackson noted calmly. Elena nodded. As expected. Lieutenant Lai, broadcast Phase 2 authorization. Throughout the human armada, ships began repositioning, forming 5 massive corridors leading away from the Nilari homeworld. We're not fighting the Confederation, Elena explained to the bewildered Nilari leaders. That would be suicidal. Instead, we're going to show them something more powerful than their regulations, the power of example. The next 48 hours unfolded in organized chaos as the evacuation began. Human vessels descended to floating Nilari cities, where massive water tanks, many improvised from cargo holds, were filled with Nilari families and essential cultural artifacts. Dr. Patel's team had created a revolutionary suspension gel that allowed the aquatic species to survive the journey with minimal water requirements, reducing by 70% the mass that needed transportation. Earth engineers had modified commercial stasis systems to accommodate Nilari physiology, enabling more efficient use of space. Unconventional solutions, Elena explained to a fascinated Keyleth as they supervised the loading process. Humans specialize in them. The Confederation enforcement vessels maintained their blockade, broadcasting continuous warnings. But something unexpected happened as the first loaded human ships prepared to depart with their precious cargo of Nilari refugees. A Thraxian merchant vessel, not part of the human fleet, broke formation from a nearby trade route and positioned itself alongside one of the human evacuation corridors. Then another non-human ship joined, and another. Within hours, dozens of vessels from various Confederation species had arrived, each offering assistance. Captain, Lai reported excitedly, we're receiving transmissions from ships across the Confederation. They're asking how they can help. Elena smiled. Seems we're not the only ones who question the cost-benefit analysis. Patch them through to Coordinator Keyleth's team for integration into the evacuation plan. Commander Vexloren's voice, when it next came through, carried noticeable strain. Captain Rice, the Enforcement Division requires clarification on your intentions. You appear to be inspiring widespread regulatory violations. No violations, Commander, Elena replied smoothly. Just independent operators making independent decisions. Perhaps your algorithms need recalibration. Turns out compassion is a variable your calculations didn't account for. 7 days later, the binary star system gave its first catastrophic warning. A massive solar flare that scorched the outer atmosphere of the Nilari homeworld. By then, nearly 2 billion Nilari had been evacuated, with the operation accelerating as more vessels joined what was now being called the Compassion Fleet across subspace communications. In an unprecedented move, the Confederation Council called an emergency session. Elena, as the architect of the evacuation, was summoned to appear, an honor never before granted to a representative of Earth. She stood before the council in her standard Earth uniform, deliberately forgoing the customary ceremonial attire. Captain Reyes, the head counselor, began, his obsidian features unreadable. You have directly contravened a formal council decision and inspired a significant disruption to Confederation protocols. I have helped save billions of lives that your algorithms determined weren't worth saving, Elena corrected firmly. And apparently, many of your citizens agree with my assessment. Murmurs filled the chamber as representatives conferred with their delegations. The council has reevaluated the Nilari situation in light of recent developments, the counselor continued reluctantly. Confederation resources will now be allocated to assist with the remaining evacuation and resettlement efforts. Elena maintained a neutral expression despite her inner triumph, a wise reconsideration. However, the counselor added sharply, Earth's probationary status must be addressed. Your actions, while perhaps well-intentioned, demonstrated a dangerous disregard for established procedures. With respect, Elena replied, they demonstrated something far more important, that procedures must serve life, not the other way around. If the Confederation cannot recognize that principle, then perhaps Earth's probationary status should indeed be reconsidered by Earth. A Milorian representative, one of the species humans had first encountered, raised a hand. I move that Captain Rice and the Earth delegation be appointed to lead a special committee to review our emergency response protocols. Perhaps there are efficiencies we have overlooked. Against all expectations, the motion passed. 1 year later, Ambassador Lethera stood on the observation deck of New Nilari, a massive aquatic habitat constructed in orbit around a stable star system 40 light-years from their destroyed homeworld. Beside her stood Elena, now serving as Earth's official representative to the Confederation. The last transport arrived this morning. Lethera's translator conveyed her joy as her bioluminescent patterns danced brilliantly. 8,100,000,000 Nilari saved, against all calculation. Some things shouldn't be calculated, Elena replied, watching Nilari children swimming through the habitat's vast ocean chambers. Some things should simply be done because they're right. The Confederation is changing because of you, Lethera observed. The new Emergency Response Directive places sentient preservation above resource calculations. 3 species facing climate collapse have already received assistance that would have been denied under previous protocols. Elena smiled. Not because of me. Because humanity reminded the galaxy of something it had forgotten in its pursuit of efficiency, that compassion isn't measured by return on investment. Below them, in the habitat's central chamber, a monument was being unveiled, a sculpture depicting human and Nilari hands joined together, rising from stylized waves. The inscription beneath it was written in both Nilari bioluminescent script and human standard language. When stars falter, compassion must not. You know, Elena said thoughtfully, watching the celebration below. Earth joined the Confederation, hoping to learn from more advanced civilizations. I never expected our greatest contribution would be reminding them of something so fundamentally simple. Lethera's translator captured her gentle reply perfectly. Perhaps that is precisely why the universe needed humanity among the stars.